Hi, I'm Rick Stiggins, and I'd like to welcome you to our workshop entitled We Can and Must Give Our Students the Gift of Confidence. I've planned this presentation to be used either two ways, as a straight presentation played all the way through, or as a workshop. In order to make the workshop possible, I've woven in some times for reflection and discussion, where you can stop the video if you wish. Secondly, I want you to understand that this is a public domain presentation. That is, it needs to be made available at no cost to all users, and use is unlimited. And thirdly, I'm going to be talking about academic student confidence, and I distinguish between that and overall personal confidence. This has to do specifically with the students' belief in themselves as capable learners in the classroom. Okay, with that introduction, let me get into the ideas that I want to share with you. There is a troubling reality that has been unfolding over the last year or more in our schools that needs attention, desperately needs attention. Many students at all levels are giving up in hopelessness, losing faith in themselves as learners. There's compelling evidence that this is the case, and I'll share it in a few minutes. The thing is, educators want and need help in addressing this, and we need to be supportive of them in that process. Thirdly, this is the most important part of the webinar, we have remedies available. And those remedies involve a community-wide effort in the service of student confidence. Teachers want and need ways to help students become confident learners and believe in themselves. Families need to help in that process, and I'll describe exactly how that can happen. And these things are a part of those proven remedies. If you hear passion in my voice as I present this, it's because I was a struggling learner. In third grade, I had great difficulty learning to read. And it became such a problem that I gave up in hopelessness, saying I'll never be a good reader. And it didn't just stay in reading. I generalized it to myself as a learner in all contexts. Luckily, as I grew, I came in contact with teachers who helped me turn that impression around. My audience in this presentation is everybody who cares about kids' well-being. So my audience is moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas, and certainly teachers and school leaders and educational policymakers. Certainly teachers and local school leaders already know about the problem. They're aware of it. I want others to be aware of it too, because it's going to take a community-wide effort to help students who have given up on themselves to come to believe in themselves again. There's a concise way to describe what we're dealing with here, and I want to share it with you. What we're talking about here are the emotional foundations of student learning success, and they're pretty easy to understand. To succeed at learning, students must believe they can succeed at learning. If they don't believe that, the learning stops. And they must be sufficiently confident to be willing to take the risk of trying, even when it's hard. Because if they're not willing to take that risk, there will be no learning. The question is, how can we help our students be willing, be confident enough to take that risk? The foundational point of this entire webinar is that learning success is as much about emotion as it is about intellect. What we're talking about here is the relationship between student success and their confidence. The two are entwined. The more success I experience, the more I'll come to believe in myself, and the more I come to believe in myself, the more I'll be willing to take the risk of trying, and I'll get more success out of it. And that's the cycle that needs to be in place in every student. The thing is, this has another version. Because if I get into a trend or a trajectory of failure, my self-doubt will grow, and the more self-doubt I have, the less I'll be willing to take the risk of trying, and the result will be failure, which will cause more self-doubt, and that cycle will unfold. What we need to understand here is that success and failure aren't events, they're trajectories. And our hope has to be to build trajectories of success, to get kids on winning streaks so they can come to believe in themselves. This is the focus of this webinar. And so before we go further in this, if you wish to stop and have a discussion, I have some questions for you to think about, so we personalize your thinking about this. In what school subjects were you the most confident, and why? In what school subjects were you least confident? Once again, why? If you wish to stop now and collect your thoughts on that, then you can carry them forward into the rest of the workshop. If not, let's just proceed. What I want to consider is all of the reasons why it's critically important that we deal with matters of student academic confidence and its relationship to achievement right now, today. And there are several compelling reasons. The first is the impacts of the pandemic on school functioning and kids and their success. Often remote learning tactics just didn't work. Kids tuned out. I heard stories of teachers watching their screen in Zoom teaching lessons and watching the screens go dark as kids disconnect. Many didn't have access to the technology required. And what happened as a result of this is that students experienced a lack of success, which might have included failure because they didn't participate in instruction, or just disappearing opportunities to experience success. The point is, it didn't work, and many students said, this isn't working for me, and I give up. And they lost confidence in themselves. And this is just the beginning of the list. So, for example, many students just didn't return to school. We all know about this. We hear about it in the media. There's been a lack of achievement gains since kids have returned in many places. Chronic gaps across different student subgroups that we have tried desperately to narrow. Teachers facing unprecedented ranges of achievement in their classroom, having to deal with students at vastly different levels of achievement. It's very challenging. And then chronic and increasing absenteeism. All of these are indications that students are losing faith in themselves and in schooling, and they're giving up and lack of confidence, and the implications of this are profound. The National Center for Disease Control and Prevention reported last year that 40% of high school students report having had persistent feelings of hopelessness. The implications of this are profound. I want you to think about this, if you wish. Do ideas come to mind for you about what we might do to help students gain academic confidence? What might be some of the keys to our success in doing this? If you're in the workshop mode and would like to stop and think about that, bring those thoughts with you as we continue. Welcome back. If you stopped for a discussion, I hope it was a productive one. But now that we've established that academic confidence needs to be a priority, let's get down to brass tacks and let's talk about what we can do to give our students the gift of confidence. And it turns out we have a variety of options available to us. An overarching way to think about this is that it's going to take a community-wide commitment and involvement to help students gain or regain their confidence. This is not something that can be done in school alone. we need to have home involved and school involved and the community involved, and there are specific ways that we can do that. So to begin with, what we're going to need to do is put the spotlight on the monitoring of student achievement as it evolves while it's happening day to day in the classroom. In addition to that, we're going to talk about how to help students learn to manage their own growth and become confident in the process. Thirdly, we're going to need to establish a different kind of, a new kind of, critical kind of teacher-parent collaboration partnership. This collaboration is going to be critical, and I'll describe the detail of it. And finally, we're going to need school leadership and educational policy for a new mission that includes both achievement and confidence as its priorities. I want to describe a new kind of student-teacher partnership in which teachers help their students gain control over their own growth, their own academic achievement, where they play a role in partnership with their teacher to manage their own learning. And in this case, the people who can take advantage of this new kind of relationship, certainly includes classroom teachers, for absolute certain. But in addition, if families are homeschooling their students, then they too can take advantage of the development of this kind of a relationship. Anyone who's dealing with students with special needs or those who are engaged in early learning programs, all of these are contexts where this new kind of relationship can be immensely productive. Anyone who's involved in supporting the learning success of underserved students can make major gains by relying on the relationship that I'm about to describe. And that's important because we have now a foundation of research that supports, with empirical evidence, teachers who use the kinds of tactics that I'm about to describe produced higher achievement. So there's compelling research with disadvantaged students to take advantage of this relationship. And in this case, in the development of the relationship, I want teachers to take the lead. And the reason is that teachers in all of those contexts care deeply about student learning and their success and so their confidence. And in addition to that, they're the most responsible parties for, you are the most responsible parties for learning success, which is the foundation of confidence, and offer many opportunities for students to engage in activities that promote that confidence. And besides that, teachers design and manage the procedures to be used to monitor or to assess student growth in the classroom. This is a leadership role for teachers in this context. Now, what I want to describe next is what we want students to see in order to begin to develop their confidence. Students come to believe in themselves as learners when, for example, they see that their success is building on itself over time. In addition, when they see their strengths overcoming their weaknesses. These are things that kids experience that can grow their confidence. They become more confident when they can attribute the growth that they're experiencing to their own efforts. Wow, I did this. This is due to what I did. Yields more confidence. When they can overcome unexpected setbacks, kind of on their own. And when they see the gap narrowing between where they are and where they want to be, these are all things, if we can help kids see these things, we grow their confidence. When they can tell the story of their own success to someone with evidence to back it up, that they're growing. So then the question is, what can we do to help kids experience these things? And the answer is by students and teachers partnering for learning success. The foundation of this is I want teachers to help students always continuously know answers to 3 driving questions. Where am I headed in my learning? Where am I now in relation to those expectations? And how can I close the gap between the two? What I want you to notice here is where the locus of control resides. Students know where they're going. They know where they are now, and they take responsibility for closing the gap between the two, obviously relying on their teacher to coach them in that process. Now let me break these down a little bit more so you can see what they mean. In order to help students know where they're going, we need to provide them with clear learning targets, a student-friendly version of the achievement expectations up front from the beginning of the learning. Also sharing with them examples across levels of achievement, from low achievement to high, that sort of describes for them the pathway that they're about to follow. What we're trying to do is bring students inside the tent where the secrets to their success reside. So clear targets from the outset so I know where I'm going and a pathway. To understand where I am now, we need to offer students continuous descriptive feedback describing attributes of their work while it's changing. And this where it becomes critical. Teach students the skills of self-assessment and how to set goals for what comes next in their learning. Do you notice the relationship between the two? If students understand the target and begin to develop a vocabulary associated with communicating about it, then the descriptive feedback will be more meaningful to them. And to the extent that they understand the learning target and the pathway to get there, they can engage in a self-assessment process to know, to watch themselves progressing along the learning target pathway. And then they can partner with their teachers to understand what comes next in their learning. The locus of control resides within the student and their success in that context. It's what yields the confidence that comes from this process. And then close the gap and watch themselves closing it. Teachers can design focused lessons that deal with specific attributes of performance and teach students focused revision of their work based on those lessons. And then thirdly, and in this case really importantly, engage students in continuous self-reflection on changes in their own capability. Help them keep track of their growth and give them opportunities to share the results of their work, that is, to share their learning. On that last bullet, it makes me think of the idea of student-led parent-teacher conferences, in which teachers help students prepare with growth portfolios, with evidence that they can share with their parents and describe. They'll have the vocabulary and the understanding to describe to their parents how they've grown over time, with evidence to back it up. I have watched parents literally move to tears with pride and surprise at what they see their munchkin doing in a student-led conference that they'd had no idea they could do. What we're talking about here is learning and paying attention to the emotional dynamics of the learning process as we go. And the result is students being able to say to themselves, I'm in charge here. I've got this. So by sharing the target up front, this controls anxiety. And let me be clear about this. There's no guessing, because the resulting anxiety is the enemy of learning. The more anxious I am, the more difficult it is for me to learn. By, for example, revealing the pathway to success, we provide a way for the learner to see the gap closing. and be able to say, I can do this. In that right-hand column, I want you to be seeing the definition of confidence for a lifelong learner. By providing continuous feedback, we help them know what help I need and where I can get it. By having students collect evidence of their growth over time, we leave them in a place where they can say, look, I'm on a winning streak, gonna keep it going. Do you see how it gives them a sense of control, a sense of being in charge? If you don't define lifelong learner in those terms, if you don't define confidence in those terms, I don't know how you define it. The thing is, we know how to do these things, and we know how to help educators learn to apply them in the service of student academic achievement and academic success. If you want to take a time for a brief discussion, reflection discussion, teachers or those of you involved in any kind of classroom activity, can you think of activities or practices that you use now in your classroom that have students monitoring their own growth over time? Please, if you're taking a gap in the workshop format, talk about things now that look like using assessment for learning in these terms. Welcome back from your conversation, if you took time to have one. What I want to do is review some of the foundations of what we've been talking about, some of the emotional foundations. We started out by saying learning success is as much about emotion as it is cognition. That is, in this case, the emotion of confidence. And it is the case now, I hope I've established this, that teaching success is as much about managing emotions as it is managing instructional strategies. These are critical foundational points. And I want to carry that forward in our understanding of this from the student's point of view. The revolutionary reality of the last 20 years in the research conducted around the world and our work at the Assessment Training Institute is that the student's emotional reaction to their feedback will determine what they do about it. What we need to be clear about is who's in charge of the doing here. It's the learner. And so what we want to do is bring our students to a place where upon receiving feedback, they're prepared to have the productive response to it. The productive response leaves them saying, I get it. I understand these results. I know what I need to do about them. I'm okay. I'm handling this. Now the fourth bullet is just critical. Therefore, I choose to keep trying. And so they move forward. The probability is great that they'll move forward on the learning track in their winning streak trajectory. On the other hand, there's a counterproductive, hopeless response in which students are left to say, I don't understand this feedback. I have no idea what to do about it. I'm no good at this stuff anyway. And again, the fourth bullet is critical. I quit. Do you see how if a student comes to this place, the probability is good that the learning is going to stop? It's in the thinking of the learner that's important here. What students think about and do with their own results while they're learning is at least as important as what we adults think about and do with those results. I want to share with you the work of Albert Bandura, a professor emeritus at Stanford, in which he defined confidence in terms of something that he labeled self-efficacy. That is, a sense of a person who has a sense of control over their own well-being. In our case, we're talking about academic well-being. And Dr. Bandura has provided us a continuum of self-efficacy, of control, that I want to share with you. It's in the form of 2 paragraphs from his writing. And I want to show them on the screen, and I want to read them to you, and I want you to read them with me. A strong sense of efficacy enhances human accomplishments and personal well-being in many ways. People who have high assurance in their capabilities, think students, approach difficult tasks as challenges to be mastered rather than threats to be avoided. Such an efficacious outlook fosters intrinsic interest and deep engrossment in activities. They set for themselves challenging goals and maintain a strong commitment to them. They heighten and sustain their efforts in the face of failure. They quickly recover their sense of efficacy after unexpected failures or setbacks. Now, I highlighted this next part in red because it's critical to what we're talking about. They attribute failure to insufficient effort on their part or deficient knowledge in their knowledge base or skills that they believe are acquirable. So they believe they can overcome. They approach threatening situations with the assurance they can exercise control over them. Such an efficacious outlook produces personal accomplishments, reduces stress, and lowers vulnerability. I submit to you that this must be our aspiration for all of our students, because there's a bottom end to that continuum. In contrast, and again, I'm going to read now the paragraph that describes the other end of the continuum. People who doubt their capabilities shy away from difficult tasks, which they view as personal threats. They have low aspirations and a weak commitment to the goals they choose to pursue. When faced with difficult tasks, they dwell on their personal deficiencies or on obstacles that they will encounter or all kinds of adverse outcomes rather than concentrating on how to perform successfully. Can't you see that happening in students at some points? They slacken their efforts and give up quickly in the face of difficulties. They're slow to recover their sense of efficacy following failure or setback. Now again, highlighted, because they view personal performance as deficient aptitude, it does not require much failure for them to lose faith in their capabilities. A lack of internal control. I submit to you that our mission as educators is to move students as best we can with everything we have going for us to the positive end of that continuum. And the thing is, we know how to do that. We have the tools to do that, and I've described some of them. This is critical. This is what the webinar has been about, those dynamics. What I want to talk about next is the home-teacher relationship, the home's contribution, the parents' contribution to student-teacher partnerships. Because parents care as much as teachers about both success and confidence. These are your children. Parents have excellent opportunities to support learning and the development of confidence, as many as teachers have. So these are things that I think that families can do, parents, grandparents, whoever happens to be supporting the students' learning outside of school. One idea that I think would be really, really important is for parents to team with teachers and go to policymakers to demand attention to a two-part mission: academic confidence and academic achievement. be advocates of that idea in the policy forum, together as a team. In addition, parents, I want you to tune into and talk with your child about wins and needs and wants. Be an active player day to day. An active player asks the following kinds of questions of their student upon returning home. What were you trying to learn today? Show me. Did you get better at something today? Show me. What special progress are you hoping to make? Let's talk about it. What parents can do is keep the spotlight on the child's growth over time. Make it public. Make graphs. Do things that show the progress while it's happening. Parents can talk in positive terms about school. Let positive talk dominate. And this should be number one in your hearts. It's just always celebrate wins in highly visible, special ways. Wins are really critical. They turn things around and support the development of confident learners. These are exactly the same things that parents, that teachers are doing day to day in the classroom. Setting up and talking with students about wins and needs and wants. They're active players. Put the spotlight on growth. This is what teachers do. If both of you are doing it, it's a unified front. And teachers, you may need to help parents learn to do those things. It may not come naturally to them. Put the spotlight on your growth, on student growth over time, and make graphs and other ways of showing it. This, again, is what teachers do if both of you are doing it. If you're talking with each other about it and comparing notes, these are good things. This is what puts together a uniform front. This collaboration is just critical. I want to also talk about contributions that can be made by school leaders and policymakers. If policy guides practice, then what we need is sound policies to guide sound practice in this regard. That requires a fundamental understanding of at least the basic principles of sound assessment practice. I urge you to study and master these things, if you haven't already. Also, from a leadership point of view, this idea of a two-part school mission is foundational. A mission aspiring to maximum academic achievement and maximum academic confidence. The combination is what's critical. In addition, from a leadership point of view, support teachers as they help their students learn to monitor and manage their own learning. This may require for teachers some professional development, maybe not. Maybe they have been trained in that in their pre-service preparation and their graduate programs, but in any event, support them if they learn, or support them while they're doing this. Make it a big deal. Put the spotlight on learning growth as it's happening. And finally, build local achievement monitoring systems that meet the assessment needs of all users. Students, teachers, parents, and school board members. Different people need different kinds of information in different forms to do their jobs, to inform their instructional decisions. Make sure all of those needs are being met. So we have partnerships now that are about students and teachers and parents and policymakers. That kind of collaboration is the community-wide effort that I spoke about earlier. I wrote a book on these things. It's entitled Give Our Students the Gift of Confidence, and the subtitle is It's Essential for Learning Success, so you can understand why I would use that title. And I want to tell you a little bit about it. It's a book of stories of what happens to students in the classroom when they experience this kind of, these kinds of activities and this kind of success. There's a little story about Rick, the non-reader, and how my sense of myself as a learner was turned around. There's a story of a student who gave up on herself as a writer, but later became a really competent special writer. And that transformation is described. There's a story of a student who is conducting a student-led conference and how confidence came from that whole experience. So it's a book of stories. The ideas are depicted too, as I've described to them, but in greater detail. But it's the stories that I want to mention. In addition, in this book, I identify a list additional resources that interested folks can turn to if they wish to learn more about these ideas. There's resources for teachers who might want to learn more, resources for school leaders who might want to learn more, resources for parents. They're listed and described in this book. And so it is a resource that you could use if you're interested to follow up on this idea and think more about it and then go on from there as you wish. There's information here on how to order the book if you wish. Just scan the QR code or Corwin.com or Amazon.com. And the Amazon one includes a digital version too. I just believe deeply in it, and I want you to too, for the sake of the kids. And that's kind of the point of all of this. Students and educators right now need successes. They need optimism. They need winning streaks. They need hope. It's really important, and the thing is, we know how to help them succeed. And that's what this entire webinar has been about. If you wish to follow up with questions or ideas, you can reach me at any time through my website, rickstiggins.com. In the meantime, thank you very much for listening, for learning, I hope. I hope it's been a productive experience for you. And thank you for all of the things you do for the little kids, for the big kids, for the young adults. Thank you for taking care of them and helping them learn and helping them become confident.